The world is watching Washington, its attention fixed on the heart of American power. Outside the White House, a sea of cameras and reporters from every corner of the globe captures the tension in the air as history prepares to unfold. Today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy meets President Donald Trump at the White House, a moment that has drawn the eyes of millions. This is no ordinary diplomatic meeting. The stakes are enormous, and the atmosphere is charged with anticipation and uncertainty. The future of Ukraine, the stability of Europe, and the global balance of power all hinge on what happens here. Every word spoken, every gesture made, could tip the scales. The summit comes on the heels of Trump's controversial meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, a dramatic encounter that set the stage for today's high-stakes negotiations. Trump is seeking more than just a temporary ceasefire. He's pushing for a comprehensive peace agreement that could end years of bloodshed and reshape the region's future. For Zelenskyy, the pressure is immense. He carries the hopes, fears, and expectations of a nation devastated by war. Every Ukrainian is watching, hoping for a breakthrough that could bring relief and security. At the negotiating table, Zelenskyy must fight for Ukraine's survival, sovereignty, and future, knowing that compromise could mean sacrifice, but intransigence could mean continued suffering. The outcome of these talks could ripple across the globe, shaping alliances, shifting power dynamics, and influencing international relations for years to come. Both leaders face powerful forces and entrenched interests pulling them in different directions. Advisors, political opponents, and global powers all have stakes in the outcome. The world waits, holding its collective breath, to see if diplomacy can triumph over conflict, and if words can succeed where weapons have failed. Zelenskyy now has the rare opportunity to lay out Ukraine's case and its conditions for peace directly to the American president, hoping to secure vital support and understanding. For Trump, this is a legacy-defining moment, a chance to be remembered as a peacemaker, or risk being blamed for a diplomatic failure with global consequences. The pressure is immense, and the stakes could not be higher. Every decision made in these rooms will echo far beyond Washington. Around the world, people gather in public squares and newsrooms, watching live coverage, waiting for any sign of hope or disaster. What happens in Washington today could define the future of peace or war for generations to come. Before today's high-stakes meeting at the White House, there was the much-anticipated Alaska summit, an exclusive encounter where Trump and Putin met face-to-face, away from the public eye, behind tightly closed doors. The world watched anxiously, speculating about what might be discussed and decided in that private room. The summit ended with no formal agreements, no joint press conference, and, crucially, no ceasefire in Ukraine, leaving many observers frustrated and disappointed, especially those in Kyiv who had hoped for a breakthrough or at least a sign of progress. Ukrainian officials grew increasingly anxious, fearing that the meeting had simply bought Putin more time to press his military advantage on the battlefield, while their own voices remained unheard. Despite the lack of concrete outcomes, Trump publicly called the summit a success, insisting that significant progress had been made behind the scenes. However, he offered few details, leaving the world to wonder what, if anything, had truly changed. In the aftermath, the diplomatic focus shifted away from a temporary ceasefire and toward the possibility of a comprehensive, long-term peace deal, an ambitious goal that would require the cooperation of all parties involved. Yet the exclusion of President Zelenskyy from the Alaska talks only deepened concerns in Ukraine and among its allies, fueling fears that the country's fate was being negotiated without its direct input or consent. The optics were troubling, two global powers appearing to discuss and potentially decide the future of a third nation, while that nation's leaders waited anxiously on the sidelines. That's why today's White House meeting is so essential. It's a crucial opportunity to restore trust, reaffirm alliances, and ensure that Ukraine has a direct seat at the negotiating table, shaping its own destiny. The Alaska summit was a risky and controversial opening move, but it succeeded in breaking the diplomatic ice and forcing the urgent issue of a final peace settlement onto the global agenda, where it can no longer be ignored. Zelenskyy's invitation to Washington is a direct result of these shifting dynamics. Now, for the first time, the most critical party is finally present and able to advocate for Ukraine's interests firsthand. The stage is set for high-stakes diplomacy. with the world watching closely to see if real progress toward peace can finally be achieved. Zelenskyy arrives in Washington, carrying with him the hopes of a nation and a set of clear, non-negotiable demands for peace. His visit is not just diplomatic, it is a mission to secure Ukraine's future and dignity on the world stage. First and foremost, complete and unconditional withdrawal of all Russian forces from every inch of Ukrainian territory. For Ukraine, there can be no compromise on sovereignty or territorial integrity. This is the foundation of any lasting peace. Second, an immediate release of all Ukrainian prisoners of war and civilians held in captivity. The pain of separation and uncertainty must end for thousands of families. And third, the safe return of abducted Ukrainian children whose futures have been stolen by war. Their reunification with families is a non-negotiable demand. These are not just political points, they are moral imperatives, deeply personal for a nation enduring immense pain and loss. Each demand represents a story, a family, a future at stake. Ukraine insists on being treated as an equal partner in any negotiations, not as a pawn in the games of great powers. The country's voice must be heard and respected at every table. Zelenskyy's visible frustration at being excluded from the Alaska talks only underscores this demand for respect and true self-determination. Ukraine refuses to be sidelined in decisions about its own fate. Justice and accountability are also essential pillars. Ukraine seeks not only reparations for the immense destruction, but also prosecution for those responsible for war crimes. Without justice, peace cannot be real. These conditions, withdrawal, return of people, restoration of sovereignty, and pursuit of justice, are the true price of a real and lasting peace. Anything less would be a betrayal of Ukraine's sacrifices. Anything less, Zelenskyy believes, would only reward aggression, embolden future violence, and guarantee that the cycle of conflict continues. For Ukraine, peace must be genuine, sustainable, and built on justice. Only then can families return, cities rebuild, and children dream again. The world is watching closely, waiting to see if these demands for justice and dignity will be met, and if the international community will stand with Ukraine. The stakes are nothing less than Ukraine's future, and the future of peace and justice in our world. Zelenskyy is clear. A temporary ceasefire is not a solution. A truce would freeze front lines, reward Russian gains, and let Moscow regroup for future attacks. Ukraine's bitter experience shows that frozen conflicts rarely stay frozen. A temporary halt would leave Ukraine in limbo, unable to rebuild or guarantee security. For Zelenskyy, this is not peace. It's a postponement of war. He insists on a comprehensive agreement. Full withdrawal, long-term security guarantees, and a future free from fear. Rejecting a ceasefire is risky, but accepting one could mean sacrificing Ukraine's survival. Zelenskyy must convince Trump and the world that only a final settlement brings real stability. Ukraine is fighting for existence, not just a pause in violence. As Washington negotiates, Europe watches with hope and anxiety. European leaders worry a quick deal could undermine Ukraine's long-term security and their own stability. They demand robust, legally binding security guarantees for Ukraine. Vague promises won't do. For Europe, Ukraine's security is their security. European involvement is crucial. Their participation adds credibility and enforcement power. A collective guarantee involving major European powers and the US would send a strong message to Moscow. But Europe is divided. Different countries have different interests and levels of support. Forging a unified European stance is a challenge, but essential for lasting peace. The outcome in Washington will shape Europe's future as much as Ukraine's. Trump approaches the Ukraine war as a high-stakes negotiator, aiming for a grand bargain, not a temporary fix. He wants a historic deal that ends the conflict for good, positioning himself as the indispensable dealmaker. After Alaska, Trump believes direct talks with Zelenskyy and Putin can break the stalemate. Supporters praise his boldness. Critics fear he'll pressure Ukraine into a bad deal for a quick win. The challenge satisfies both Kiev's demands for security and Moscow's desire for concessions. If today's meeting goes well, a trilateral summit with Putin could follow. It's all or nothing. Success means a monumental achievement. Failure could deepen the conflict. Trump's legacy and the fate of Ukraine hang in the balance. The world is watching to see if he can deliver. Trump's diplomatic push has sparked global debate. Everyone wants peace, but no one agrees on how to get there. European leaders support talks, but fear Russia is using diplomacy as cover for more aggression. In the US, opinions are split. Some see hope in Trump's engagement. Others fear it legitimizes Putin. Sanctions and security guarantees are hotly debated in Congress. In Ukraine, there's cautious optimism, but deep anxiety. Being excluded from Alaska stung. But the White House invitation is a positive step. The principle is clear: nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. Negotiators face immense scrutiny from allies and adversaries alike. Building consensus will require more than just a deal between Kyiv and Moscow. It must reassure a divided world. The outcome will shape global security for years to come. As leaders negotiate, war rages on in Ukraine. Daily violence, shelling, and suffering continue. The ongoing conflict complicates talks, fueling mistrust and making compromise harder. Both sides seek battlefield gains to strengthen their negotiating positions. The cycle is vicious. Fighting undermines diplomacy, and stalled talks fuel more fighting. Civilians pay the highest price, caught in the crossfire. The urgency for a real solution grows with every casualty. A peace deal is only meaningful if it ends the violence on the ground. The challenge: bridge the gap between diplomatic words and battlefield reality. Until then, peace remains just talk, and the war's toll mounts. Today's White House meeting is a potential turning point, a crossroads for Ukraine and the world. Success could mean survival for Ukraine, the return of its people, and a path to rebuilding. Failure could mean more war, more loss, and a future defined by fear. The positions of Ukraine and Russia remain far apart. Territory, sovereignty, and justice are all on the line. Yet the focus on a comprehensive peace deal is a significant shift. Trump's direct involvement brings new diplomatic firepower to the process. If he can align Zelenskyy and Putin, a breakthrough is possible, though the path is narrow. This meeting will test the resolve and skill of all involved. The outcome will send a powerful signal about the future of international security. For Ukraine and the world, the hope is that today marks the beginning of a genuine, lasting peace.